Meta, a company that's been flailing as of late because of its failed metaverse endeavors that seen them sink billions upon billions of dollars into a project that has not gained a whole lot of traction. And on top of that, just the general growth of the company has been stifled, and the economic state of the world is not helping things either. And that's resulted in Mark Zuckerberg sending this message to Meta employees, where he's essentially informed them that a huge portion of the workforce will be laid off. I've decided to reduce the size of our team by about 13% and let more than 11,000 of our talented employees go. We're also taking a number of additional steps to become a leaner and more efficient company by cutting discretionary spending and extending our hiring freeze through Q1. Nothing about Meta's spending has been discreet, especially where the Reality Labs division, which deals in the VR headsets and the metaverse, is concerned. We're talking about dozens of billions that have gone into this thing that is really not working out. He says, I want to take accountability for these decisions and for how we got here, except the ones who are actually held accountable were the over 11,000 employees who were let go. How exactly has Mark Zuckerberg taken accountability and responsibility for the situation that he caused through his poor leadership? Has he faced any sort of consequence outside of the things that he can't control, like the stock price dipping and his value dipping with it? He proceeds to explain how we got here. He states that at the start of COVID, the world rapidly moved online, and the surge of e-commerce led to outsized revenue growth. Many people predicted this would be a permanent acceleration that would continue even after the pandemic ended. I did too, so I made the decision to significantly increase our investments. Unfortunately, this did not play out the way I expected. Not only has online commerce returned to prior trends, but the macroeconomic downturn, increased competition, and ad signal loss have caused our revenue to be much lower than I'd expected. I got this wrong, and I take responsibility for that. Just saying you're taking responsibility doesn't mean you're actually taking responsibility. Again, the ones who actually faced the brunt of this whole situation were the over 11,000 employees who were let go. People who are not responsible for Mark Zuckerberg's woeful miscalculations and Mark Zuckerberg's misguided commitment to this metaverse thing that nobody seems to want. A pursuit so piss poor in its execution that it feels like it has single-handedly sunk Meta to lows not seen for many, many years. And it's not as if Mark Zuckerberg is showing signs of course correction. He seems to want to double, triple down on this metaverse endeavor. In no way, shape, or form has he really taken true accountability or responsibility. He's just saying the words as empty platitudes because it's what he needs to say. He continued to highlight other cost-saving methods that the company's employed. We have shifted more of our resources onto a smaller number of high-priority growth areas. We have cut costs across our business, but these measures alone won't bring our expenses in line with our revenue growth, so I've made the hard decision to let people go. To be clear, it's not that Meta can't afford to keep these employees around. They just wouldn't service what is the ultimate goal of a corporation like Meta: revenue growth. It's not about what is absolutely necessary. It's about bookkeeping. It's about making sure that their next financial results look a certain way. Now, the employees who are getting laid off do seem to be getting a generous severance package. He says right here that there is no good way to do a layoff, but we hope to get all of the relevant information to you as quickly as possible and then do whatever we can do to support you through this. Everyone will get an email with all the details, including information about severance. We'll pay 16 weeks of base pay plus 2 additional weeks of every year of service with no cap. And there's information here about pay time off, RSU vesting, health insurance, career services, immigration support, so on and so forth. So hopefully at the very least things go well for the laid off employees on this front so that they're able to have a nice safety net before transitioning to their next employment opportunity. He then shares additional plans like how we're extending our hiring freeze through Q1 with a small number of exceptions. I'm currently in the middle of a thorough review of our infrastructure spending. We are making all these changes for 2 reasons. Our revenue outlook is lower than we expected at the beginning of this year, and we want to make sure we're operating efficiently across both family of apps and Reality Labs. Reality Labs has become something of a cursed division for Meta and a major source of many of its woes in recent weeks, months, and years. He closes off by insisting that the future of Meta is looking bright, that they're being underestimated. I want you to know that we're making these decisions to make sure our future is strong. When he says our, he's certainly not including the expendable employees who are used as disposable tools. Our really means the company, Mark Zuckerberg himself, and the handful of executives who are deemed to be more important than the ground floor employees who are doing the hard work. He continues by saying that I believe we are deeply underestimated as a company today. Billions of people use our services to connect and our communities keep growing. Well, actually, people are moving away from Facebook. Their TikTok competitor, Reels, is not doing so hot compared to the competition. And people just don't care about the metaverse, employees and users alike. Projections for active users on Metaverse have been way below what Meta anticipated and hoped for, but we'll get to that in a bit. Our core business is among the most profitable ever, built with huge potential ahead, and we're leading in developing the technology to define the future of social connection and the next computing platform, referring to the metaverse. We do historically important work. I'm confident that if we work efficiently, we'll come out of this downturn stronger and more resilient than ever. This whole we're in this together energy that comes right after a major display of how disposable and expendable employees are is it's kind of laughable. It goes without saying that this announcement made major headlines, with Axios reporting here that Facebook parent Meta is laying off 13% of staff. And then scrolling down, it is highlighted how the company has lost more than 70% of its value this year. Though it is noted that Meta isn't the only tech company that have announced steep layoffs recently to withstand the economic pullback. But when it comes to how the economy, the stock market, and other tech companies are trending, the downwards trend of Meta has been much steeper than the average trend right now, which is why Axios also reports that Meta's foundation is crumbling, showing their quarterly operation margin here and the downwards trend. It states right here that the company's first ever widespread job cuts come after years of rapid unchecked hiring, including a jaw-dropping 28% rise in headcount last year, which was a major part of Mark Zuckerberg's miscalculation that after COVID, e-commerce would stay at the same levels. And look, I'm no genius businessman, but to me it seems fairly common sense to predict that if COVID was the cause of the surge in e-commerce and people are no longer locked in and they're going out more, then things would go back to the original trend before COVID. If the thing that caused certain markets to surge goes away, then the surge will just dissipate alongside with it. Going all in on rapid unchecked hiring that resulted in a jaw-dropping 28% rise in headcount last year during uncertain economic times just seems to me like a very premature move, especially during a time when Meta's stock value has been trending downwards after they rebranded to Meta and began to focus too much on the metaverse, and when signs were clear that the metaverse was just not gaining traction, especially in relation to the amount of money that's being sunk into the metaverse division. Again, dozens of billions of dollars. The end result is a company that reported 2 consecutive quarters where revenue declined, which shattered investors' confidence in the future of the company, which is why the stock value is currently sitting at some of the lowest we have seen in many, many years. This article also reminds us that Meta stock has lost more than 70% of its value this year, and to further highlight that Meta's downwards financial trend is much steeper than the current trend and the current norm, it is reported here that Meta was the worst performer so far this year in the S&P 500 index. Axios further bullet points that Meta's net income has grown significantly slower than its revenues in the past 5 years, that Apple's changes to app tracking cut $10 billion from its bottom line this year, referring to how Apple now prompts users whether they want to allow an app to track them or not. And so when people choose to not be tracked by Facebook and the like, that is a significant blow to Meta as a company because so much of their business is tracking user data, information that can be used to target ads at people, with ads, of course, being the main source of revenue for Meta. Axios also makes it a point to highlight that Meta has been investing heavily in the years-off metaverse future through unchecked metaverse investment and hiring that might have been sustainable in a growing market, but the sudden sharp slowdown in advertising is making the project's cost stand out as a problem. The article concludes with a quote from Forrester Research Director Mike Prohl, who had this to say about the current state of Meta. Meta is amidst an identity crisis. The company has one foot in a risky long-term metaverse bet and another foot failing to compete with TikTok. Expect more headwinds from Meta as Gen Z continues to exit Facebook and favor TikTok over Reels, and CMOs consolidate their slashed media budgets towards safe and sure bets. Other news outlets who reported on this whole situation was Business Insider in an article whose headline reads, "Not even Mark Zuckerberg's beloved Metaverse projects are safe from Meta's sweeping layoffs. If anything, the Metaverse projects are a major contributor to why these layoffs happened at all." As Business Insider itself highlights, Meta has pumped billions of dollars into its Reality Labs division, leading to massive losses. The article then shares the history of how this decline began. On October of 2021, Zuckerberg rebranded Facebook's parent company as Meta. Since then, the company has been flailing. In the second quarter of 2022, it posted its first year-on-year revenue decline, with another drop following in the next quarter. From the start of 2019 to September 30th this year, Meta has plowed $36 billion into Reality Labs. $36 billion. As of April, there were more than 10,000 people working on its Metaverse projects, more than a tenth of its workforce. Reality Labs has reported massive losses that are crushing the company's profits. In the first 9 months of 2022, the division spent $10.8 billion but generated revenues of just $1.4 billion, leading to operating losses. That's a 10-to-1 ratio of loss versus revenue, to give you an idea for just how much money Reality Labs is burning through. And Meta itself admitted during a recent SEC filing that the losses will only become worse. "We continue to anticipate that Reality Labs' operating losses in 2023 will grow significantly year over year." Signs that Meta would be taking drastic measures to cut costs became apparent back in September of 2022 when Meta responded to drops in growth and revenue with a hiring freeze across the company. And that was after Mark Zuckerberg issued warnings of rough tidings ahead when he said that there'd be an intense period that could last up to 2 years. Prospects on the Metaverse's future became much more pessimistic when it was reported that even employees can't be motivated to use the Metaverse app because of how buggy it was and the fact that it didn't make the workplace more convenient. And it got bad enough that Meta essentially had to beg and force employees to start using the Metaverse, stating that everyone in this organization should make it their mission to fall in love with Horizon Worlds. You can't do that without using it. This was sent to employees back in September of 2022 via a memo, which insisted that employees need to get in there, organize times to do it with your colleagues or friends in both internal builds, but also the public build so you can interact with our community. Basically saying, force yourself to like it and use it. I mean, if employees can't find the motivation to use this thing, what makes them think that customers and users will? Which is exactly what this Business Insider report from back in October 2022 conveys via this headline that reads, "Most Metaverse users don't even make it a month." The Wall Street Journal reports most Metaverse users don't return to the Horizon Worlds platform after the first month. And beyond that, Meta hoped and expected that by the end of 2022, Horizon Worlds would have 500,000 monthly users, but they had to change that goal and reduce it down to 280,000, but they couldn't even meet that reduced goal. Documents show the platform has less than 200,000 current users. So way below goals and expectations. You've got executives within the company like Oculus VR CTO John Carmack saying things like, "There's a bunch that I'm grumpy about when it comes to virtual reality and the current state of the metaverse." You've got articles like this from the New York Times painting the picture that there's a lot of skepticism, confusion, frustration, and struggles surrounding Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse vision and his execution. Recent unveilings like the $1,500 Quest Pro VR headset with only 1 to 2 hours of battery life and coming in at 3 times the price of the Quest 2 despite being roughly 50% more powerful has not really done much to impress people or further interest in the metaverse or in the VR landscape. Him having to announce basic features like avatars now having legs has been met with ridicule, with people bringing up this instance where Mark Zuckerberg showed such an ugly avatar that it made all kinds of headlines even across major mainstream news outlets beyond your gaming news sites. People also brought up how Mark Zuckerberg tried to assuage the backlash and the ridicule by showing these screenshots of what avatars and what Horizon Worlds environments could look like when it comes to graphical fidelity in the future. This avatar still doesn't look all that appealing, really. This is the next stage of what avatars will look like with a future update whose release date is still to be determined, which I guess looks better than this abomination here, but this is not something I'd want to interact with on a daily basis either. And articles over the past month or two have continued to highlight what a very bad time it's been for the metaverse, as IGN said here. We've seen prominent figures in the gaming industry speak out, like Phil Spencer, who said that today it's a poorly built video game when talking about the metaverse. And really, that's what the metaverse is, a glorified video game. The metaverse at its core is just a big old MMO that's trying to integrate real-life elements so that it can become its own little virtual society and virtual economy that Meta can exert control over. But so far, all we have been seeing is people losing faith in Meta's vision to the point where the company's value plunged by $700 billion in the last year, with folks labeling it as a train wreck. And just this last third quarter alone, $80 billion was wiped off of Meta's market value, bringing Meta shares back down to new multi-year lows, as reported by Wall Street Journal here. Meanwhile, articles continue to highlight the exorbitant amount of billions of dollars that Meta continues to spend on the metaverse year after year, with expenses getting bigger and bigger every year. And the general outlook right now is that Meta is currently seeing dismal financial performance. Articles are saying that it's official, Meta is a disaster. And you can see this visualized in real time if you look at the stock price of Meta, which reached an all-time high back in September of 2021 before plunging all the way down to below $100 to $90 back in November 4th. It's getting back up a little bit now, but not by a whole lot. I suppose the recent announcement that Meta would be laying off 11,000 employees and that they would be implementing cost-saving measures made investors a little happier, but the company's got a long road ahead. An uphill climb. An uphill is really an understatement. There are a lot of challenges that they have to overcome and a lot of convincing that they need to do, because the current metaverse vision that's been presented has been woefully unappealing to the vast majority of people. That's one man's take anyway, and this is everything you need to know about the current state of Meta and their metaverse pursuits. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this whole situation. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.